the path leading into the Thornspire Mountains was overgrown and rarely used. The villagers spoke of the mountains with a mixture of awe and fear, telling tales of ancient creatures that roamed the peaks and valleys, guarding secrets that had been buried for centuries. But Selene's curiosity outweighed her fear. For days, she followed the narrow trails that wound through the dense forests at the base of the mountains, climbing higher and higher with each passing day. As the days turned into weeks, Selene found herself deeper into the mountain range than she had ever expected. The air grew colder, and the forests thicker, until eventually, she reached a high, windswept plateau where the trees gave way to jagged cliffs and rocky outcrops. It was there, among the craggy peaks, that she stumbled upon the first sign that her journey was far from ordinary. Hidden among the rocks was an ancient stone monument, half buried by time and weather. The monument was massive, its surface etched with strange, glowing runes that pulsed faintly in the fading light of day. As Selene approached it, she felt a strange pull, as though the monument itself was calling to her. At its base, partially hidden under a layer of dust and rubble, lay a small, unassuming stone, no larger than her palm, yet it seemed to vibrate with an energy that was both foreign and familiar. Without thinking, Selene reached out and picked up the stone. The moment her fingers touched its smooth surface, a shock of energy coursed through her body, and her vision blurred. In an instant, the world around her disappeared, replaced by a flood of images, ancient cities made of shimmering crystal, filled with people who moved with grace and purpose, their hands glowing with magic. Then, darkness. A thick, suffocating darkness that swallowed the city's whole, consuming everything in its path. Selene gasped and dropped the stone, stumbling backward. The vision faded, and she found herself back in the mountains, her heart racing. What she had just seen, was it real? Or was it just her imagination playing tricks on her? Before she had time to collect her thoughts, a voice called out from the shadows. "You shouldn't be here." Selene spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the small dagger she kept at her waist. A figure stepped out from the shadows of the nearby trees, his movements fluid and deliberate. He was tall, clad in dark, weathered armor that looked as though it had seen more than its fair share of battles. His face was partially obscured by a hood, but his eyes, piercing and green, were locked on the stone in Selene's hand. "That artifact," the man said, his voice low and gravelly, "doesn't belong to you." Selene's grip tightened on the stone as she backed away, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "My name is Alaric," he said, "and if you know what's good for you, you'll leave this place and forget you ever saw that stone." But Selene wasn't the type to be easily intimidated. She had come too far, and the strange visions she had seen had only deepened her curiosity. "What is this stone?" she asked, holding it up so that its faint glow illuminated the runes on the monument behind her. "What did I see?" Alaric's expression hardened, and for a moment, Selene thought he might attack. But instead, he sighed and looked away, his gaze falling on the distant mountains. "What you saw," he said quietly, "was a glimpse of the forgotten realm, a world that was sealed away centuries ago to protect both our world and theirs." Selene frowned, confused. "A realm? Sealed away?" Alaric nodded. "Long ago, the people of that realm wielded magic far more powerful than anything we know today. But their power became their downfall. Greed, ambition, and pride tore their world apart. In the end, the ancients sealed their realm away, locking it behind a barrier that only a few chosen individuals could ever hope to breach. Selene looked down at the stone in her hand, the weight of it suddenly feeling much heavier. "And this stone, it's a key?" Alaric's eyes darkened. "Yes. And now that you've touched it, the barrier between our world and theirs has begun to weaken. Dark forces, things that have been waiting for centuries, will soon begin to stir." Selene's mind raced as she tried to process what Alaric was telling her. A forgotten realm, ancient magic, dark forces awakening. It sounded like something out of one of the old legends she had heard as a child. But the stone in her hand was real, and the visions she had seen had felt too vivid to be a mere dream. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Alaric's gaze was unreadable as he studied her for a moment, then he stepped forward and gently took the stone from her hand. "We stop them," he said simply. "But first, we need to seal the barrier before it's too late." Selene watched as Alaric turned and began to walk toward the distant peaks of the mountains. For a moment, she hesitated. She could return to her village, pretend this had never happened, and go back to her old life. But something deep inside her told her that this was what she had been searching for all along, the adventure, the purpose that had always seemed just out of reach. With a deep breath, Selene shouldered her pack and followed Alaric into the mountains. The days that followed were grueling. The path they traveled was steep and treacherous, winding through narrow gorges and over jagged cliffs that seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky. The air grew thinner the higher they climbed, and the temperature dropped with each passing day. Alaric was a quiet and mysterious companion. He spoke little of his past, though Selene could sense that he carried a heavy burden. His eyes often seemed distant, as though haunted by memories he would rather forget. Despite his silence, he was a capable and knowledgeable guide, navigating the dangerous terrain with ease. As they traveled, Selene found herself growing more and more curious about the Forgotten Realm. She had always believed that magic was nothing more than a myth, yet now she held in her hands the key to a world where magic had once flourished. What had happened to those people? How had their magic become their downfall? And more importantly, why had she, of all people, been the one to find the stone? One evening, as they made camp in a sheltered cave high in the mountains, Selene finally asked the question that had been nagging at her since the beginning of their journey. "Why me?" she asked, staring into the fire they had built. "Why did I find the stone?" Alaric was silent for a long time before he spoke. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I've learned that things like this don't happen by accident. The stone chose you for a reason." Selene frowned. "But I'm no one special. I'm just me." Alaric's gaze softened slightly, and for the first time since they had met, Selene saw a flicker of warmth in his eyes. Sometimes, it's the ones who think they're ordinary who are capable of the most extraordinary things. As they neared the heart of the mountain range, the air around them seemed to change. It was subtle at first, a faint chill that crept into their bones, a heaviness that hung in the air. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. The sky darkened, and the wind howled through the mountains with an unnatural fury. "We're close," Alaric said grimly as they reached the mouth of a massive cavern that stretched deep into the heart of the mountain. "The barrier is weakening." Selene's heart pounded as they stepped into the cavern, their footsteps echoing off the walls. The stone in Alaric's hand began to glow brighter, casting an eerie light over the ancient runes that covered the walls of the cave. But they weren't alone. As they ventured deeper into the cavern, shadows began to move around them, shifting and swirling like living things. And then, from the darkness, they emerged, twisted, nightmarish creatures, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Selene drew her dagger, her hand trembling as she faced the oncoming horde. But Alaric stepped forward, his hand outstretched. The stone in his hand flared with light, and the creatures recoiled, hissing as they melted back into the shadows. "We have to hurry," Alaric said, his voice tight with urgency. "The longer we wait, the stronger they'll become." Together, they pressed on, deeper into the heart of the mountain, where the fate of both worlds awaited. The adventure of Selene and Alaric has just begun. The echoes of the forgotten realm whisper of secrets yet to be uncovered, of ancient powers waiting to be awakened. What lies beyond the barrier? Will they be able to stop the dark forces from crossing into their world? Only time will tell. To be continued.